Howdy guys, well, it appears as if I got inside just in time because it's coming down, which it seems to be doing all the time nowadays. So, a little bit of a precursor here. Obviously this is the overflow valve. It's pretty much just a pressure relief valve. The reason this is necessary is that your lift pump supplies low pressure fuel, 20, 30 pounds, whatever it is, depending on your system, to the injection pump. Now, at full throttle, your injection pump is going to use a lot more fuel than at part throttle. So, your lift pump obviously needs to support enough fuel for at wide open throttle, but when you're at part throttle, you got extra fuel. Where does it go? Well, this thing lets it go back to the tank. And frankly, it's always a good idea to, even at full throttle, you want fuel to always go through this thing back to tank. That way it can keep the injection pump cool, and that way you don't run out of fuel. Because the moment you run out of fuel, your pressure drops to zero, and you have power issues. Even if it doesn't drop to zero, even if it gets low, different setups is different, but for a stockish truck, under 15 is not a good number. You wanna keep it at least 20 at full throttle. Above 25 would be best. So obviously that's what it does, and we're going to take it apart. Obviously this guy's not supposed to be hand tight, but mine's the upgraded version, so it is. Okay, we got this little plug you take out. Obviously there's a copper washer there, so if you're going to take this off in the truck, remember, it's there. Don't drop it. Okay, then you got a spring there. It goes like that. We got this ball here. There you go. Now there's a seat in there. You really can't see it, but there's a seat that the ball seats against. Like so, and that seals off this. Oop, don't go. Yeah. Okay. The pressure from the lift pump goes into this here, and then that ball, if you put it in the hole right, dang it, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, if you put it in the hole right, it seals that off. So now the holes here that the fuel would otherwise be going through are now sealed off, and so no flow through the system. So, and the spring here pushes that ball shut. Now, when the fuel pressure against the ball via this hole is enough to compress the spring, it opens the ball valve, opens the ball, and lets fuel go back to the tank. That way, you can regulate the pressure at a certain amount. Now, that works fairly well. Obviously, there's this pretty restrictive unit with small holes and such, but it works very well for what it was designed to do. So here you can see the plug here. Let me go get the stock one. This one I ground some off there. That little peg. Let me get it. And there's our second overflow valve here. You can see I ground some off. The reason is they had a special spring, and I didn't want to monkey with it, because they had it wide here, then tapered down, and I decided to not monkey with it, so I just ground that down so that normal spring would fit. Much more options. There you have it. There it goes. Anyhow, back to this. Now to adjust these things, there obviously isn't any kind of like screw-in type adjustment where you're just tightening something up. So you gotta do is either shim the spring, grind some off the spring, or replace the spring. Now the stock spring is known for breaking and becoming weak and letting the ball open at a low pressure, decreasing the fuel pressure you're running. And you, like I said, you want to keep it above. I think Cummins spec is. How that thing goes. Cummins spec is I want to say 17 to 22 idling and 25 to 35 wide open throttle. And that's if I remember it correctly. But either way, it's pretty close to that. Really, you want to keep it above 15. I think I already said this. Above 15 wide open throttle, or preferably above 20 or 25, and then don't go over 60. I have no proof that actually 60 is the magic number as to when stuff starts breaking, but that's when the general rule of thumb is. And then the metal lines that go from the fuel filter to the injector pump also apparently start breaking open at about 45 psi. So you want to just remember that when you're setting your fuel pressure and choosing your springs. And what we're going to do is, before installing these springs in the truck, we're actually going to test them with our fancy-dancy OFV valve tester. So here you can see this spring was in the truck. Now the problem with this spring was that it was very stiff, and it worked fine. It gave me about 35 pounds at idle, but then it'd go up to like 60 pounds at 3,000 RPM, and that was just a little much. And I don't see a need to be running that much fuel pressure with I got the 96 215. That's what this goes in here. That's what this guy goes in. So I don't really need that kind of fuel pressure. So I'm going to try to go for a more steady fuel pressure. Probably I wanted to open probably about 20-25, and then I have a feeling that will give me about 30 to 35 psi fuel pressure. Maybe about 40 at 3,000 RPM. I'm not sure, but we're going to play with it. So what we're going to do is just going to replace the spring here. Now, obviously, if you want to change fuel pressure, you can always shim it or grind some off or cut it or whatever. But I'm going to just go ahead and replace the spring, because obviously a softer spring is going to open. Once it starts to open, it's going to open faster than a stiff spring. And because of such, we're going to replace it with a softer spring, try to get a more faster open rate. Okay, if we can get this thing screwed on. And there we go. Now, I'll tighten this guy up, and we're going to go over to our injection OFV valve tester, our scientific rig we got going. Okay, so, see you there. Howdy guys. Well, here you can see our highly scientific test bench. We got overflow valve right there, and we got it on a 1/2-inch air brake line. I think any 1/2-inch hose should work. Anyway, we got a 1/2-inch barb to 3/8-inch MPT, then from 3/8-inch to 1/4-inch, and we got a air compressor hookup. And then, so we don't trust our air compressor gauge here, which has proven to be a little bit off, we're going with this gauge here, which I have double checked with a couple other gauges, and they all read the same. So that is good. You really can't read the gauge, can you? Not really. You can't see 10, 20. Anyway, so we're going to do, you can't really see it. You don't really need to see it, because we're going to be listening for it. We're going to go just the pressure up. Just using the regulator, obviously. That's just the pressure up. We're up to 10-ish. Maybe 10. Let me start the camera over so you can see the numbers. Okay, draw that. Okay, we're just above 10 there. Nothing. 20. Good, we're at 22. 24. You can just hear it start to pop off there. It's about 24 it's doing it. Well, you can see it. So, it's about 24 psi. Now, obviously, since the fuel takes, it's very restrictive with all these small ports and trying to get around the ball. It's not very open flowing, so the fuel pressure won't be 25 psi. I don't know what mine's going to be. It's probably going to be around the 30, 35 figure. But at least we know it opens at 24, and we're in the ballpark. Sometimes when you're playing with different springs, you really don't know what you're going to be running at. And so I've had it actually at 60 something, and it's good to know before you put it in the truck. And so there you are. And just for the heck of it, here's the stiffer spring I took out just a little while ago. Here we go. Sounds like it's starting to rain a little. Here we go. Started to open just about 15 psi. However, because I got very stiff spring in there, it's a much slower opening curve. So, there you go.